Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. And when she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41.
For anyone who's wondering if the Underbelly podcast has stopped, no, we haven't. Rita has just been in deep research on how to kill people. I'm sorry. I have been helping, but I've been slacking.
Well, what's really sad is, I get, the problem with me is that I start researching and then I can't stop and I can't gather what I've researched. Like if I had a focus for a paper or something like that, that would be one thing. And we all know that that's not always as interesting. But this is so interesting, and we're talking about a serial killer today. Or, well, I don't know if she would totally fit the definition of what a serial killer is, but we'll talk about that later. But we're talking about a big killer today, and I was like, I'm so fascinated by true crime and so fascinated about Lizzie Borden that I just couldn't stop myself. And I reached out to you a couple of times. I'm like, sorry, this is just never ending, and I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to stop.
No, like I love Deadly Women on Investigation Discovery. I totally like, I don't know if the right word is like, but I'm totally fascinated about women who kill, and yeah. I profusely apologize to the guy I'm talking to right now. It's not like something you should worry about.
Or is it? You've got a very angry dog. What else about you? I don't know. Be concerned. I could see the murderous posters in your background.
They're just emotional curtains, like Demi Moore from St. Elmo's Fire. I like to rock back and forth while they billow behind me.
Oh my gosh.
The wine red curtains. I'm totally not day drinking. What is there to worry about? You're the one sitting in the dark who did the bulk of this research.
I am sitting in the dark. I don't understand why either, because I put a light on and I still feel like I am dark. But whatever. Maybe it's dark like my soul.
Okay, so some housekeeping things. We are hoping, cross our fingers, to have an ongoing podcast series about female killers, serial or otherwise. So if anyone has any tips or any suggestions, please contact us at podcastunderbelly@gmail.com. Listen to our podcast on SoundCloud and YouTube under the Underbelly Podcast, or I lurk in Twitter a lot, so please contact me at Rainey Scribbles. And Rita, who is absolutely wonderful and does not mind having the FBI. I did do research many, many years ago. I was dating someone and he brought me to the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast in Massachusetts.
Was it creepy? Describe it.
I couldn't really enjoy it too much because he dragged me to Boston, and I fucking hate Boston so much that I was just like grumbling and everything. And then he's like, but we're here at the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast. Isn't this exciting? And I was just irritated. But it was in Fall River, actually, just less than 100 miles out of Boston.
So you didn't think it was wicked awesome?
I did not think it was the most wicked cool thing ever.
I've never been there. I've been, obviously I've been to Boston and I went to Salem, which was really cool, but I have never been to Lizzie Borden's bed and breakfast, and that's obviously now a bucket list item for me.
We should go. We should go one day and podcast from there. It's supposed to be haunted. It wasn't haunted.
Yeah. It wasn't haunted?
It wasn't haunted. Well, I don't know. Maybe the ghosts were like, God, this bitch must be on her rag. Let's avoid her.
Let's just not be around right now. Yeah, it's really funny to me, these haunted places, and some people go and they get experiences and other people go and nothing happens. It's kind of like the ghosts are just like, I'm not feeling like coming out today.
Not today.
You seem like nice people. We're not going to bother them today.
Or probably like domestic problems. Let's leave them alone. We've already had that, hon. It didn't end well. Or she reminds me of my daughter, and not in a good way.
She reminds me of Lizzie. Well, so yeah, I always have questionable Google searches. It's just a part of my life. I can't help it. I'm a curious person, and I will Google anything. I honestly don't know how I lived in a period of time when I could not just Google from my phone. That is pretty tragic to think about. But I am recently reading a book, but I keep putting it down. It's interesting. It's just very long. It's called The Serial Killer Files, The Who, What, Where, How, and Why, The World's Most Terrifying Murders by Dr. Harold Schechter, I think is how you pronounce it. And
so Fresno State, right?
Yes. And I just find it so interesting. And I think that's why I started thinking, it's like I've read a lot of true crime books. I've read a lot of things about serial killers. I've watched a lot of shows about it, very much into it. But I read it with, there was some additional information that I never thought of before, there's different definitions of serial killer, like what the FBI constitutes as a serial killer, how many people a person has to kill before it becomes.
No, what's really weird is Fresno State is actually not that far from me.
That's so cool.
No, it's not. Fresno is in the middle of nowhere, but I'm like, it's not that far. I can actually go there. That's why it made me feel bad, because I'm like, I could actually go to their true crime archives, but I don't want to drive to the frickin' of nowhere in Fresno.
I just know Fresno is California. I can't even picture where it is geographically. Some of the information that I gathered about this from Fresno State is that serial killers are obviously a person who commits a series of murders, often with no apparent motive and typically following a characteristic, predictable behavior or pattern. That's a problematic definition for a couple of reasons, but that's sort of an overall thing. And this is some of the information that they've found, some of these characteristics. Usually they're white. Mm-hmm. Usually they kill between 7 to 10 victims.
Ooh, Lizzie.
Often the victims, and I should specify this is for female serial killers.
Well, see, Lizzie falls short of the 7 to 10, but she does fall within that killing family members.
Right, exactly. And, yeah, so, and with women, serial killers, women murderers, they usually do kill family, which is really creepy but interesting. Most of the murderers were middle and upper class women. Nursing is an occupation that's overrepresented among female serial killers.
Dude, my mom is a nurse.
My mom was a nurse as well. I mean, I think there's a connection there.
I have to make sure not to piss my mom off.
Because there's been a lot of nurses who killed.
Oh, yeah. Patients. Yeah, the Angel of Mercy thing doesn't come out of nowhere.
Right. What else is interesting is that most female serial killers were married at some point. In fact, these serial killers were serial monogamous, married on average twice, and as many as 7 times. Where they could ascertain appearance, most were reported to be average to above average in attractiveness. What's interesting is 100% were Christian. According to his research. That's really interesting. 100% were Christian.
Creepy.
Female serial killers primarily kill for money.
Lizzie.
According to viralnova.com, female serial killers use gender roles to their advantage, and this ties into them being nurses and whatnot.
Lizzie, again, using the, I'm just a female, I can't kill.
Right. And also her motive of money, right? I mean, the money of the estate.
Allegedly. Tied
in with her anger with her parents, or with her father and her stepmother. what also is interesting, male serial killers are more likely to be caught than female serial killers. And more often than not, I think it's because of the ways that women kill, and also because they're women, and for a long time in history, they were not thought of as being capable of such violence. But it is the truth. Poison is likely, or usually, the method of choice for women. And tying into, obviously, male serial killers more likely to be caught, women evade capture for longer. So
Now,
they're able to usually do more damage. Not necessarily true with Lizzie, but...
Now, in my own, admittedly not so thorough research, I found that the reason why it's harder for women to be caught is that they have a longer cooling down period than male serial killers, whereas men will kill within a few weeks or a few months. Women actually have a cooling off period of a couple of years.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So, my thing is like, is it because it's harder for women to get victims? Like a lot of these, as you pointed out, a lot of these people that they murder are family members, sometimes even their husbands. So I wonder if why it takes them so long is, you got to get the guy to date you and marry you and all these things. I mean, I'm still trying my hardest to get a key into my new guy's apartment. I don't know how long it takes to get someone to marry you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe because they have a more involved process. Yeah, and I think this was something that I mentioned here, that, serial killers like Jack the Ripper, who we've talked about before.
Oh, and please catch that podcast. We did one.
Male serial killers usually act out violent, aggressive sexual fantasies. They're usually more physical with their victim, whereas women use the more passive form of poisoning, right? But the question is, how passive is it really? Because this requires a person who usually poison over a prolonged period of time.
Well, I also...
victims suffer, to sit there and watch them be ill and be so physically ill which is really worse, you know what I mean?
Well, as you put in your notes here, and my God, your notes are beautiful, by the way, female serial killers are just as aroused by their crime, by their murder, as the male serial killer is. Whereas, male serial killers use a knife like Jack the Ripper in what I would think is like a substitute for a phallic, symbol.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if female serial killers like to use, poison, doing something domestic, something that is seen as, a loving act, and just, for lack of a better word, bastardizing it. Like, feeding you shows that I care about you, but I'm actually feeding you poison. Haha.
Right. Inverting that domestic expectation of this woman who's providing for her family and cooking for them and this wonderful meal, and there's poison in it and you're going to die a slow, horrible death, and I'm going to be aroused by it. Really, really disturbing.
Really, really creepy.
Those women who do poison their family members. They poison their husbands. They poison their children. They poison their own parents. They poison their siblings. They're not poisoning a stranger. As a matter of fact, that's extremely rare. They're usually poisoning a person who, they're supposed to love. And their children. I mean, it's so beyond fucked up.
And I think, getting into Lizzie Borden, proper, what really fascinates me about her is that she seems to straddle male behavior and female behavior in serial killers. Now, she kills people who are close to her, not strangers, as, what seems to be common in male serial killers. She kills her dad and her stepmom, right? Stepmother.
Yeah.
But she also doesn't use poison, which is the typical MO for female serial killers. She actually, like, picks up an axe, you know, as the old nursery rhyme says.
Yeah, she uses this axe, and it is a very physical crime. It is a very physical action. It wasn't, like you said before, this domestic thing of poisoning. There is something that we can look at in a little bit to see, did she maybe attempt to do that before and it failed? I don't know, but it is, like you said, very interesting. I think that the murders demonstrate that whoever did do them, because Lizzie was found innocent, or not guilty, at the very least, not necessarily innocent, whoever did them had a lot of rage and a lot of animosity toward her father and her stepmother. So.
Which is also what we find in a lot of female serial killers. There's a lot of suppressed rage in them that people are shocked to find out could possibly be inside this woman.
Right.
You know?
Should we get into it? Shall we officially begin our Lizzie Borden exploration?
Okay, let's go for it.
So I don't know why it just made me laugh the way that you just said it. Let's go for it.
Yes, man, I'm ready for this. I am ready. I'm ready, Rita. Let's go.
Okay.
Maybe I have rage too.
What?
Maybe I have rage too.
Lizzie Borden was born July 19th, 1860 in Fall River, Massachusetts. She lived with her father, Andrew Borden, her stepmother, Abby, and her sister, Emma. Emma was about a decade older, I think 9 or 10 years older than her. Andrew was extremely cheap. The house had no indoor plumbing or electricity, which was sort of the fashion at that time, especially for wealthy families, which they were. They were extremely wealthy.
Oh yeah, because the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast house, I mean, it's a pretty big house by that standards. I mean, it wasn't a mansion or anything, but I could imagine in the mid 1860s this would be considered, you know, upper middle class, right?
Right. And, you know, in spite of all of that, Andrew was stingy. And this was also a source of conflict in the family. Another source of the conflict in the family was that the sisters really did not appear to like Abby Borden at all. They were not close. They called her Mrs. Borden. They didn't call her Mom. They didn't call her Abby. She was Mrs. Borden. And there's such a formality there. Oh my God, right? I mean,
and I think it's also because Abby was not that much older than Lizzie, and I think was actually maybe not that much older than Emma either, right?
I don't think she was that much older than them, no.
And Andrew Borden was really not for his daughters getting married. He was a very controlling man. Right.
And there was also, the girls were annoyed because Abby Borden's family frequently came and received loans from Andrew. He bought her relatives a house in a really nice, fashionable area, and reportedly Emma and Lizzie were furious over that, and that was just a huge thing as well.
Yeah, he seemed to be generous with his new wife's family, but Lizzie and Emma were put, like, on very, very strict allowances.
Right.
Which is, I mean, that's messed up, but still how he died is kind of overkill.
Right. Lizzie was they all were heavily involved in the church, but she was a Sunday school teacher, which became a really interesting fact that was thrown about a lot in court. You know, this woman, this petite female, being accused of murdering these people, and she was a Sunday school teacher.
Which actually goes back to what you brought up in your research, that these female serial killers are all avowed religious women, if not avowed Christians. So maybe we'll stick a pin in there and come back later.
Yeah, it's interesting. Abby and Andrew were murdered in their home the morning of Thursday, August 4th, 1892. Abby was murdered sometime between 9 a.m. and 10:30 a.m., and Andrew between 10:30 a.m. and 11:10 a.m. I think what ended up happening was Andrew went out for his daily walk. While he was out of the house, it's believed that Abby was murdered. He came home, took his regular nap downstairs, and was murdered during his nap by the same person. According to the reports at the time, from one of the medical reports, Abby was first struck on the side of the head with a hatchet, which cut her just above the ear, causing her to turn and fall face down on the floor, creating contusions on her nose and forehead. Her killer then struck her multiple times, delivering 17 direct hits to the back of her head until she was dead.
Again, a lot of rage, a lot of anger, a lot of... This is just somebody who wanted to cause her a lot of pain.
And, I mean, that is just obviously, you know, it wasn't even like she tried to fight back for her life. She was hit in the back of her head, fell, she turned, fell, and was killed as she was lying down. It's just crazy. Actual occurrence now. Some of the suspicious things that happened before, during, and after. For several days before the murders, I think this is really interesting, the entire household was ill, violently ill. A family friend later speculated that mutton left on the stove for use in meals over several days was the cause, but Abby feared poisoning, as Andrew Borden was not a popular man. And what actually came out in court, although they couldn't 100% prove it, was that Lizzie had tried to buy poison a few days before the murder. And she claimed that she had a rat problem at home that she wanted to take care of.
And that's not so unusual at that time. It actually isn't, because rats in big homes like that was an occurrence, and it's not too weird for people to buy rat poison to get rid of a rat problem. But then again, if you're trying to, you know, murder your family, might be a little more easier back then, right?
Right.
And Andrew Borden didn't have a full staff taking care of his house. He expected his daughters to help in with the housekeeping, so I think that would make it totally easy for Lizzie to put poison in the food. But would she poison herself, Rita?
It's a good question. I'm not sure. I think, and they all were supposedly not feeling well. One thought I had was maybe she didn't poison herself. Maybe she didn't really eat. Maybe she pretended that she was feeling sick like everybody else to fit in. I don't know. And who knows? I mean, it was one of the first times that a trial like this was happening. I mean, you think of like Casey Anthony, O.J. Simpson, things like that. This was the O.J. Simpson trial of the time. Who knows? I mean, someone could have just been lying that she came and she tried to buy the poison. I think it's interesting. I don't know if that person necessarily would have lied. It was something that could never be officially corroborated by anybody else. But I don't know. I think it's interesting. Also, when she was first responding to police officers' questions, she was really acting bizarre. She said things that contradicted what she had said previously. She said that she had entered the house, nothing was amiss, nothing was wrong, she didn't hear anything. She said that her stepmother had left the house because she had received a note from a sick friend and was going to go visit that sick friend. Lizzie is the only person in the house who was told this, who saw this, who knew anything about this. They never could find a sick friend, and they could never find the note either. And they would find that really suspicious that Mrs. Borden would have thrown that note out. They believed that they should have been able to find it. And a friend of Lizzie's who started losing faith in her and didn't believe her as much made a sarcastic comment like, oh, well, I guess she burned the note before she went out. And Lizzie was like, yeah, she must have.
But then again, was this friend Alice Russell?
Yes.
She also caught Lizzie burning a dress, right?
Mm-hmm. Blue dress, supposedly paint-stained. After the crime.
Paint-stained. Right? Paint-stained.
Yeah, paint-stained, right. Mm-hmm. Which is very interesting. And her friend at the time, Alice Russell, went to the police, told them about this, thought it was really weird and suspicious. And so she was called in for an inquest where she gave incredibly inconsistent and therefore suspicious answers. Her testimony eventually was decided to not be admissible in court. This is probably because of the fact that she was very high on morphine. Really high on morphine to calm her nerves, so they said that's why she was giving inconsistent.
It was actually administered by a doctor, I believe, because right. Lizzie swore that she couldn't handle what had happened to her father and her stepmother, and the doctor thinking that, this is Lizzie Borden, well-bred young lady who witnessed something so terrible. Morphine was, for lack of a better term, mama's little helper back then. So it was something that you gave to steady a woman's nerves.
Yeah.
So could Lizzie have killed her parents and then asked a doctor for morphine because she was afraid that she would be interrogated by the police? This makes her sound like she's so incredibly smart. Don't you think, Rita?
Or maybe, or maybe it was just that she wanted to seem upset. Maybe that what she assumed that she should do at that time was to seem upset. And especially for a person who has to fake it, go overboard. So who knows? Maybe she was overboard in her reaction to it, and the doctor was like, "Oh, you should have some morphine," and she's not going to say no to morphine. For not even just to take the drug. I mean, it would look probably strange if she's so bereft and grief-stricken. If she's like, "No, I'm going to be okay. Never mind, I don't need morphine.
I'm cool with it."
Right. So I think that there's something there. I think that she was bright. I think she probably knew that would help her out, but it didn't. It made her very suspicious. It helped her out in that whatever she said that day wasn't being able to be, put into court record, but damn. And what else is also really interesting and suspicious was she was home at the time of the murders, though she claimed to be in the barn, specifically in the loft. Investigators claimed this was next to impossible due to the heat. It was a boiling hot day, and the fact that the dust on the floor was not disturbed. She claimed to have been up there, organizing things, eating pears.
Of course, the old eating pears alibi.
I didn't kill him. I was eating a pear at the time.
And again, you would think, right? Maybe, even if she was in the barn is not that far away from the house. If it was this random stranger, she wouldn't wonder why there's this strange person hanging around her house.
And, I described before about how Mrs. Borden was killed. She had to have screamed. I mean, Andrew Borden was attacked in his sleep. Maybe, he didn't have a chance to react, but Mrs. Borden had a chance to say something, and the question is, well, why would this person come in, spend hours in the home, hours, kill Mrs. Borden, wait, during that time one of the maids is around, Lizzie's around, kill Andrew, and then kill Lizzie.
Right? Where was this guy between almost an hour? Hiding in a closet the whole time?
Right. And how could he have not known that Lizzie wouldn't walk in or Lizzie wouldn't see him? If you're going to do something like that, wouldn't you kill everybody that's there? You don't. And also they thought it was the police were incredibly suspicious of her, did not believe the word she was saying, and didn't believe that someone would come into the home and wait hours there like that. Hours, from 9 to 11:10. Someone who had to have been in the house all morning to not be detected by anybody.
Yeah, I mean, the only other excuse it could be is this is like a killer who just got really lucky that nobody noticed them at all.
Right. And then something else, the day before the murders, Lizzie made vicious comments to her friend Alice Russell, who we brought up before. So Alice Russell was already like this, the day of seeing all those things going down, had to have been like, Lizzie, she had to have thought that she was guilty. She said, according to Miss Russell, Lizzie was agitated, worried over some threat to her father, and concerned that something was about to happen. She told Alice, I feel as if something were hanging over me and I cannot throw it off. She added that her father had enemies. And that
that is really, really shady to say that I feel like something is hanging over me. You know, like that's almost confessing before a sin. Yeah. I'm sorry, that's like my Catholic coming out, but it feels like she's
confession.
Right? She's pre-confessing. And you mentioned, Rita, in your notes here that Lizzie's trying to tell Alice Russell that her dad has enemies, right? But I think her dad's biggest enemies are his two daughters, the people he has hurt the most.
Yeah. And imagine you're living in this house.
This beautiful home.
Beautiful home. The daughters are unhappy. They're unmarried.
They're getting older.
They're getting older. They have no independence. And they're probably miserable every day. They're calling their stepmother, they're calling her Mrs. Borden. There had to have been a lot of tension in that house. And I think it's interesting too that it came out later on as well. Like all these things start coming out. And again, like I said before, it was so salacious and dramatic and, all of this stuff. And that all of these things ended up coming out and you have to take them all with a grain of salt. But like it came out that she said something about her stepmother, that we don't listen to a word she says. And that she can't stand her. And yeah, when she died, she said, I loved my stepmother. She, we had a fine relationship. Her sister Emma also defended her and said she had we had a loving relationship. The interesting thing that came out during the inquest was one of the people asking her questions referred to Abby Borden as her mother, and she snipped at them and said, she wasn't my mother.
I don't know. I don't know about Abby Borden's relationship with the sisters as much. But I do remember reading a book about Lizzie Borden, and this is the one thing that always stuck in my head, right? Is that Lizzie had pet birds that she kept in the barn, right? She even made she even made like a birdhouse for them. I don't know what kind of bird it was, but some of the local children had been coming to the barn to take a look at these birds. And Andrew Borden didn't like it, and he actually killed her pet birds with a hatchet and then made her clean it up. And she kills her dad with an axe.
And then there was also reports, many people also think it's not true, but there are a lot of people who do think that there was some sort of incestuous thing going on between Lizzie and her father.
Oh, really?
Yes, that has come up a little bit. Some people do think there was some sort of vibe going on there. And, I haven't really found anything to substantiate that. Like I said before, there were probably a lot of rumors going on around and, who knows what to believe at this point. but you can only go off of these dramatic paper reports at the time. But there was this weird thing, and I know we'll probably talk about it later, but we both saw Christina Ricci's performance in Lizzie Borden.
Oh God, it was so good. I loved it.
And there's like the movie that was made for Lifetime, and then they did a little mini series. But there's a vibe in the movie as well between them.
The one thing that I find really interesting is that Andrew Borden had stated in his will that if Abby would die before him, her widow's dowry or whatever it's called reverts back to him, and then if he dies, it goes to the daughters, right? Now that's very interesting, because if Andrew died first, then things get split equally between Abby and then her family and then Lizzie and Emma. So Abby dying first is really, really important. So if Lizzie was the killer, it would definitely be done for financial reasons.
Right.
So fascinating. This is so insane.
I know. And then so during the trial, the trial started on June 5th, 1893. They had a little bit of a hard time because they found a hatchet head in the basement that they originally thought was the murder weapon. And it was later on determined to probably not be the murder weapon. So that became a huge problem during court. No bloody clothing was found. No blood found on Lizzie. There was no blood found in anybody's house. You have to keep in mind her address. So there's a possibility that happened. There is a theory that she committed the murders naked, which they do in the movie. They have Christina Ricci walking around with no clothes on, killing everybody. So that is an interesting theory.
And instead of a hatchet, it's a big fuck all axe that's like twice as big as she is.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Something that ended up happening actually right before the trial was that there was a similar axe murder, but they found who was responsible for that, and they determined that the person who killed this other person was actually out of the country when the Bordens were killed. So they were definitely not responsible for the Borden murder.
Although, don't you think that Lizzie, being the well-read, educated woman that she is, might have drawn inspiration from that? I mean, this was in the height of the newspaper wars.
Yeah.
So, And
well, Lizzie's parents died first. And then there was another axe murder that happened. So that person probably got inspiration from Lizzie.
Oh, look at Lizzie, like, already affecting pop culture. I mean,
yeah.
Knowing about this podcast, I tried to do my own little research, and you would not believe how much books, movies, even a ballet was inspired by Lizzie Borden.
Like, she's everywhere. I mean, I think mostly everybody, if you say Lizzie Borden, they know, they conjure up this image of a woman holding an axe, and what else happens during court is that they started investigating if they were possibly poisoned because of the mysterious illness. So they actually did tests on them. They were determined to not have any poison in their bodies, so that's something. Something else that happened during court that adds to this whole ghoulishness and just, again, talks about how dramatic these courtroom proceedings were. They actually had removed the heads, and they brought the skulls in as evidence of both Lizzie's father and Mrs. Borden, and they brought them into court.
Is that real? Because they did that in the Christina Ricci Lifetime movie, and I thought that was just bullshit.
No, they really did do that. They were evidence. They brought in the skulls. They didn't tell anybody they were doing it. They brought them in. They put them down on the bench, and Lizzie passed out.
Well, I mean, even if she killed her parents, seeing somebody's skulls is going to cause me to pass out.
Yeah, I mean, I have to wonder how much of that was necessary and how much of that was maybe trying to intimidate her, and then also how much of it was trying to drum up this drama for everybody that was there. I mean, there were a lot of people who came to see these proceedings for who knows. But anyway, after deliberating an hour and a half, the jury acquitted Lizzie on June 20th. So it wasn't very long. The jury didn't deliberate very long, and they decided to acquit her. But her life was never the same. She was viewed, many people were still convinced that she was guilty, including the police. And, you know, she lived a quiet but wealthy life for the rest of her life. And she ended up actually seriously being separated from her sister. I don't think they talked in their later years.
No, actually, it's so sad. I think in a way. I mean, what did happen to poor Emma? In this story, my whole thing is like, what is up with poor Emma? You know, like, dad killed, sister accused of murder, then the sisters have an estrangement, and they both die pretty much in old age, right?
Mm-hmm. And I forgot to mention that Emma was actually not at the house at the time. She was about 15 miles away visiting a friend.
So it's definitely not her, and she had a good alibi for this.
Right. So there are some theories. Most do believe that it was Lizzie.
Mm-hmm.
Some think that she might have committed it while she was in a fugue state. Some people think that she committed the murders naked. Some people think that she committed the murders in the dress that she burned. She certainly had a lot of time to do them, especially because the murders happened, a couple hours apart.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said before, there was the theory that there was some sort of incest between her and her father. I think it's more likely about the money and the rage, probably feeling incredibly impotent, that she wasn't free, that she had to do everything that Andrew Borden said he had, and he was, by all accounts, a very cold person.
Can I please do the Fringe Theories? You know how much I love the Fringe Theories?
Do the Fringe Theories. What's some Fringe Theories?
Okay, so John Morse, who was Lizzie and Emma's uncle, the brother of their mother, did stay the night before the murders. And he was a bit upset with the generosity that Andrew Borden showed his new wife's family, that he never showed his first wife's family, and he was considered a suspect by the police for a while.
Ooh.
And then another one, and this is in a book by something Brown. I should have written this down. I'm sorry. But something an author, first name Brown. I'll put it in the description. Mm-hmm. But that Andrew Borden had an illegitimate son called William Borden.
Arnold Brown.
That's the one. Thank you. You're so smart. And and he had been fighting with his dad, right? Mm-hmm. Wanting, money and support, and he might have had a reason to kill his dad, and his stepmother was just a innocent bystander who got killed.
Yeah. Well, there's also a theory.
Okay.
There is a series by Ed McBain.
Mm-hmm.
Wrote a novel about this in the 80s. He believed that Lizzie and the maid, Bridget Sullivan, were really in a lesbian relationship, and that they were found out by Mr. Borden, who was repulsed Mrs. Borden found out about it, and she's repulsed. Obviously, Andrew was as well, and that maybe Bridget had something to do with it as well because she was home at the same time. She was busy, however, working outside of the house cleaning windows.
Ooh.
And there's also another theory. They say that maybe Bridget did it. She was furious that she had to clean the windows outside on a very, very hot day. Something else that I think is interesting that I meant to bring up before is that after the murder, like I said before, the sisters moved into a house. They were still rich, that they were still viewed as, Lizzie was viewed with suspicion. But something that's interesting is that what did she do? She went to a store and she did some shoplifting.
Before or after?
After, in 1897.
Wow, you just got away with murder, bitch. Why are you shoplifting?
Yeah. So 1893 is when the trial happened. 1897, she's accused of shoplifting.
Did she do the shoplifting though? Or just accused by it?
She was accused. In Rhode Island.
So that's pretty close to Massachusetts.
Yeah. And I mean, again, she's well known. People are suspicious of her. People do believe that she killed her father and her stepmother. So is this maybe an accusation made by a paranoid, suspicious person who's looking to get into the news, or who knows? But I personally feel that she's guilty. I can't imagine who else would have done it. I just don't buy that some evil person just happened to be passing through Fall River or had any kind of other motive to kill both of them than Lizzie. If she had done it today in 2018, she would have had a very different, obviously they would have been able to do different testing and all that, but I think it would have had a very different conclusion.
I think it's very interesting if you look at the picture of all the men who were in the jury, right? Of course, they're all men. And how they look at it is that I cannot believe that a woman would do this.
Right.
And I honestly think that if there had just been at least one woman on that jury, she would probably have been found guilty. What do you think?
Poisoning is one thing. Say she had poisoned them, they still probably would have believed that she was capable of doing something like that because she was alive in a time when people did not really believe that women even would ever have a homicidal urge in them. It would be really hard for them to accept that. But also, she killed them with an axe. That is totally different from poisoning. That's just something that they would not have been able to wrap their heads around. If a woman was on the jury, I don't know. I don't know.
That's what doing this research, that's honestly what I was thinking, what would happen if it was a woman, Yeah. Seriously. What would happen? But, I really...
It would have been a different outcome because they wouldn't have been viewing her through the same eyes, looking at her as this innocent, petite, feminine thing, this Sunday school teacher.
Yeah.
And as someone, because, in a way, if they looked at her and said she's not important enough or she's not strong enough or whatever, that they are essentially saying that about themselves.
And Lizzie Borden doing her best to try to get away from this, changing her name to Lisbeth. Okay, not the smartest move, right? Going from Lizzie to Lisbeth, but she even becomes infamous at her time because of a song, Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. And that was in newspapers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Never mind that her stepmom really only had 18 blows,
Yeah.
right?
17, and then her father was hit 10 or 11 times.
So, I mean, but she's lived in infamy.
Yeah.
There's so much about her. There's even that Lizzie Borden made for TV movie with Elizabeth Montgomery.
Yeah.
I saw clips of that in YouTube. I know there was that oh God, what was that? There was this episode on Supernatural about it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the Christina Ricci Lifetime movie, and it later became a TV series, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I thought Christina Ricci was just so amazing as Lizzie Borden.
Yeah, I thought she did a really good job.
Because even though, I mean, if you look at pictures of Lizzie Borden, I don't think it really shows how tiny, how petite, how small she really was.
Yeah.
I don't know why. These black and white pictures from the 1800s they're just awful. She's
in this dress, this puffy dress, and
yeah.
doesn't look like, she doesn't show how petite she really was in it.
I think that's really what swayed the all-male jury to think that she couldn't do this, because she was honestly a tiny little woman who had a lot of rage in her. So my question I was going to ask is, do we think that she really did it? But I guess we answered it in this podcast. We both think she's really guilty, right?
Mm-hmm. I do. I just don't see how anybody else could have done it.
So
I just think that it's if you boil it down to the person who had the most motive,
mm-hmm.
and who had means, motive, and opportunity, that's Lizzie.
So can we try to figure out why she's so fascinating? Why there's ballets and operas and books and tours over her house where this horrible murder happened? What's the continued fascination with Lizzie Borden?
I think part of it is that she's from this wealthy family, and it could seem like, she's a spinster, but she's the Sunday school teacher. She's respectable. She has everything she could want. She has basic needs and wants, right? All of them being met. And there's no account of her being violent before or anything like that. And then just suddenly one morning that all changes. And that there's just no conclusion to this. And that it was such a violent murder of older parents who were defenseless. And I think also just a lot of the mystery and unanswered questions that surrounded the trial, and all of those weird things like her burning her dress and looking for poison before, and the family being sick before, and all that stuff. And also, her maid saying that she heard a laugh, heard Lizzie laughing when she came in and saw the bodies. It's just, I think it's just a lot of mystery surrounding it. And again, like I said before, it's not like people saw into the family and could see any clear motive for that.
My thing is, just like Jack the Ripper, who got away with what he did, I think one of the most fascinating things about Lizzie Borden is how she gets away with it,
Mm-hmm.
And we're always fascinated about people who can get away with it.
Yeah, I think you're right. So just the idea of the fact that she was acquitted, but not by public opinion.
No, and she inherited the money because she was found innocent.
Right. And she was able to live out the rest of her life comfortably.
In a modern house with a full servant staff that her father would have never allowed her to have if he were alive. So, yeah, I guess that is, we want to believe that bad people get punished and good people get rewarded, and Lizzie just upends all of that.
Right.
So, Rita, which female serial killer should we try to do next?
I would like to talk about, two that I had my thoughts on. And a question that I want to ask maybe after we've talked about all of them is, are any of these women sympathetic?
Oh, yes.
I want to talk about Darlie Routier, and Karla Homolka.
Okay, so hopefully our next podcast won't be so long from this.
Mm-hmm.
And
I missed it. It was fun.
Yeah.
I love talking about Borden.
And maybe what we can do is take a poll on Twitter. So I know our next one is going to be Darlie and the next one is going to be Karla, but maybe we can think of some other interesting females and we'll put a poll up on Twitter to decide. I mean, that was really fun. The last poll we did was about Clayton from Whitney, My Love, and that poll was just so insane. I can't believe it was almost a tie that he was a good guy.
Oh my God. So that's a lot to look forward to then.
Yes, and then we have some books that we totally must talk about next. Something fun, something that we actually liked, because our last couple of books were things we didn't like.
Yeah, we should probably,
Okay, so not too much of a gap next time. This has been fun. Mm-hmm. Please listen to the Underbelly podcast. We love to hear from you guys. And if you have any female serial killers you want us to discuss, or just any killers you want us to discuss, we will do it. This is our shit.
We'll do it for you.
Yes, I am still hoping to do an H.H. Holmes after our Jack the Ripper podcast.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Okay, so I'm Rainey. She's Rita. We're the Underbelly podcast. Please come back soon. Bye.
Yay. Bye.
Elizabeth Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. And when the job was nicely done, she gave her father 41. Yesterday in Old Fall River, Mr. Andrew Borden died, and he got his daughter Lizzie on a charge of homicide. Some folks say she didn't do it, and others say of course she did. But they all agree Miss Lizzie B was a problem kind of kid. 'Cause you can't chop your papa up in Massachusetts, not even if his plan is a surprise. A surprise! So you can't chop your papa up in Massachusetts. You know how neighbors love to criticize. Got him on the sofa where he'd gone to take a snooze, and I hope he went to heaven 'cause he wasn't wearing shoes. Lizzie kinda rearranged him with a hatchet, so they say. Then she got her mother in that same old-fashioned way. But you can't chop your mama up in Massachusetts, not even if you're tired of her cuisine. Her cuisine, no, you can't chop your mama up in Massachusetts. To know it's almost sure to cause a scene.